Forgive the disconjunction of this video. It was assembled differently than prior and future videos, but it certainly is an exciting one. This is a story about an ancient city, but first I must cover what happened after the city shattered, about the naval battle between the Vadrian Corsairs and the Corellian navy. A tale about the final battle, marking the beginning of forced unification between the Vadrians and the Corellians, pushing the Vadrians into the end of their final story. Please subscribe and check out the Patreon to support the channel. It would be greatly appreciated. The storyteller's voice resonated through the gathered crowd, his words carrying the weight of ages past. "This land," he began, his eyes sweeping over the expanse of grass and water, "has history, a history whispered by the grass, sung by the water, and painted across the canvas of the sky, in a time long, long ago," he continued. "The ancient Corellian people called this land home. Yet they lived beneath the heavy mantle of Vadrian rule. Theirs was a life lived beneath the yoke of oppressors, but in the depths of their hearts they clung to a fervent desire for freedom. In time, that desire would ignite a fire in their hearts, and that they would fight for freedom. It all began in this very place," the storyteller continued, his voice growing quiet as he fixed his gaze on the serene bay that stretched out before them. A small fleet of Corellian ships turned their sails against the massive Vadrian navy that was harbored there. As the small ragtag fleet of ships sailed off, they knew it was hopeless, and their fates were sealed. And yet, they sailed anyways, willing to sacrifice their very lives to send the message to both the Vadrian and their own people, that their hearts were free and their destinies would be their own. As the ship sailed outward towards certain doom, the morning sun caught the glint of more sails on the horizon. Far in the distance, a fleet of ships, their sails glistening in the morning sun that was fast approaching. They were Vadrian ships, and they were Vadrian people. But they were sailing to aid the Corellians. Although the numbers are likely small, and most accounts are lost to history, contrary to what most people know, there were Vadrians who disagreed and were willing to fight against their own people for the cause of righteousness and for the cause of the freedom for all people. The story would have been long ago forgotten, save one woman who stood high on the bluff, looking out, knowing her 3 sons were sailing to face the Vadrian. There was an incredible loss that day on both sides, yet in the end, the Vadrians prevailed, and all the rebel ships were lost. She watched her sons sink beneath the waves and wept bitterly, and although they had lost that battle, they ignited a flame in the people's hearts that would not be extinguished, and they ultimately rallied and persevered and made their land free once more in the years that followed. The woman was asked in the years that followed if she had any regrets for the fate of her 3 sons she lost that day. Her answer was always the same: "I wish that I had more sons to give for freedom." To this day, it's a saying for the people of this land, although there are few who remember the tale from whence it came, and there are even fewer who know this. To the end of her days, she asked to be buried overlooking the bay, so that she could spend eternity remembering the morning light on the sails of her son's ships. The storyteller looked down near his feet, an unremarkable pile of stones. There was no pomp and no grandeur, just a small pile of worn stones amid the long, overgrown grass. Few remember this place. This is Karin's Cairn. Zentre is a wonderful land filled with stories, but here, years prior, the land around Cairn's Cairn, what it is now. In a world where prophecies and predictions were as common as the whispers of the wind, the 600-year-old writings of the prophetess known as the Maiden of Memory were just another set of cryptic verses, long forgotten by most. Her prophecy, etched on crumbling parchment, spoke of the gods vanishing like shadows at dawn, leaving the mortals to grapple with the sudden void. And the gods eventually did disappear, as the event we all know as the Ascension. And yet, her words, however faithful, would have been no more significant than the countless other writings that hinted at such events. What set the Maiden of Memory apart was the eerie accuracy of her prophecies, and an enigmatic twist that would bring her to the forefront of certain imaginations. This happened when, without warning, another one of her prophecies suddenly came true, and again, with such startling accuracy. It caused a renewed interest in the ancient texts. The event happened when a war broke out between Coralia and Expatria in the year 662 Divine Era. Expatria made a daring attempt to end the war with Coralia quickly and decisively. Their ambitious goal was to capture the formidable city of Colthair, a sprawling port city of immense strategic importance. Colthair was nestled near one of the most powerful divine nodes in the land, making it a coveted place. However, despite its strategic importance, the city had grown complacent in its defense, believing it was too large to be a true target. In a moment of surprise, the armies of Expatria descended upon the docks and terraces leading to the gates of Colthair, catching the city completely off guard. Chaos erupted within the city's walls, and the citizens and defenders scrambled to make sense of the sudden onslaught. Panic spread like wildfire, and the fate of the innocent citizens hung in a precarious balance. The question of who would survive this unexpected assault remained shrouded in uncertainty. In that moment of dire need, a small band of paladins, driven by a selfless commitment to protect the innocent citizens of Colthair, rallied to the city's defense. They marched resolutely to the city's gates, forming a determined line of defense against the overwhelming onslaught of attackers on the first terrace. Though their numbers were limited, the paladins fought with an unwavering and unparalleled ferocity. For a brief moment, cast a glimmer of hope over the besieged city. Yet as their swords clashed, it was clear they were too few. However, their effort was not in vain. It allowed a trio of powerful clerics, Augusto the Bold, Ecclestian, and Eshelmar Elsindriel, to fill behind the steadfast paladins. Drawing upon the power of the essence of the node within the city, a sudden and intense focus, they released an earthquake after earthquake on the attacking army. They drew upon the intense power of the node with such intensity that an unexpected cataclysmic event unfolded. The Essence Node, its latent power too great to be harnessed in such a manner, cracked open with resounding explosion. The shockwave of this cataclysmic release sent outward towards the gates and the walls of the city, obliterated not only the paladins, the clerics, and the majority of the attacking forces, but also the very heart of the city itself. Colthair, once a symbol of power and grandeur, was torn asunder by the overwhelming surge of raw, earthly energy. The devastation was intense, and the city's walls crumbled, streets cracked, and buildings were reduced to rubble. Yet, amid the chaos and destruction, many citizens miraculously survived. The sacrifices of the paladins and the clerics had not been in vain. Their selfless act, driven by a desperate desire to protect their city, resulted in a costly victory that ensured the survival of the people, but at the cost of the city itself. All that remains of the once mighty city of Colthair is a desolate husk of rubble, a haunting testament to the devastating consequences of that fateful day. Where once it stood as a valuable strategic coastal region, guarding the power of the divine Essence Node, it is now reduced to nothing more than a haunting memory. With the astonishing accuracy of the two predictions coming to pass, a renewed and fervent interest in the writings of the Maiden of Memory has cast an ominous shadow over the world. As scholars and sages delved deeper into her cryptic verses, they unearthed a revelation that sent shivers down the spine of those who dared read. The Maiden of Memory and her haunting texts unveiled a chilling truth. The gods had not ascended into some distant, ethereal realm in defense of the material world. Instead, they were truly lost forever, leaving behind an irrevocable void. The nodes themselves would all disappear in time, and humanity would descend into chaos. In the wake of this revelation, a secretive cult devoted to the Maiden of Memory arose, secretive and fervent. These cultists search out all of the words of the Maiden of Memory, living their lives in anticipation of the apocalyptic end foretold by their prophetess. Some of the most devout followers of the Maiden of Memory began to believe that she herself was a goddess, and that she had never truly died. They whispered tales of her continued existence residing as a hag in the eerie and ominous Ossamere swamps, a figure of both dread and veneration. Her cryptic prophecies, they believed, were a divine roadmap to the inevitable conclusion of all things, and they saw themselves as the chosen few tasked with ushering in this foretold cataclysm. In the city of Colthair, remembered once as good and fair, enemies pressed against its gates, and souls inside await their fates. 100 men rode out to meet the storm of hell in blood-soaked street, that cracked the node and sealed their fates, but saved the souls in peril's snare, as valor etched in hearts so bold, faces darkness and fierce as cold. Their sacrifice for Colthair's fate, in legend now, tale untold. Nodes that surged, otherworldly sight, a cataclysmic burst of blinding light. In that moment, truth and destiny aligned, with the stones of Colthair forever enshrined. A maiden and her prophecies. Over the course of 600 years, details fade into obscurity. A prophetess known as the Maiden of Memory, 600 years ago, predicted the disappearance of the gods. And that, by itself, wouldn't have been all too remarkable, since the Ascension, there had been many who claimed to have predicted the disappearance of the gods, claiming it was all too obvious and inevitable. And the Maiden of Memory would have been nothing more than one of many ancient obscure sources that seemed to predict the disappearance of the gods. And it would have been simply the ramblings of a madwoman until it came to pass. The decisive and strategic victory, bringing the end to a war quickly. Colthair being strategically important, large, bloated, but not defensible, leaving all that remains now. A husk of rubble on the water, no longer a valuable strategic coastal region, with a valuable essence node. Now it is just the rubble of blocks of ancient white stone and marble that disappears into waters. Thank you for watching. Please check out the Patreon, Discord, and World Anvil to support me and the channel.